WVOX. From Westchester and now all over the world.
1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses with my co-hosts Ardina Seward and John Sharan. And what kind of trouble did you get us in today, Ardina? I mean, you decided on election eve that you wanted to have a conversation/debate on our airwaves today?
Well, why not? We have a very important election coming up tomorrow. We are down to the wire between two great candidates, and there are a lot of issues to discuss. So before the voters go out there and pull the lever or put pen to paper, we want to get to the issues. We want
pen to paper? Where are we? In rural Nebraska?
I don't know about you, but my election, you put pen to paper and then they scan it through a machine.
Yeah, mine too. I just was playing.
I see.
Anyway, we have a full house today. We have 6 people in the room.
And one online.
And we have one online. In the room today, now, for those who aren't aware, tomorrow is election day. It's a special election to take place to fill George Latimer's seat until November, when there's another vote. And I'm assuming that both of these candidates are probably going to be running in the general election in November. But tomorrow is a table setter. Tomorrow, the person who wins becomes the incumbent. And on the Republican side is Julie Killian. And I have to be perfectly honest here. Julie Killian's husband and I went to Miami University together, and he's a fraternity brother of mine. One I really don't remember very well because he was a freshman when I was a senior, but we were fraternity brothers. And Shelley Mayer, who was on our air a few months ago, as was Julie, in a much closer proximity to election date. So we have, from the campaign for Julie Killian, we have Mollie Fullington, who also, to be fully explanatory here, was my boss when I worked for Governor Pataki as his lone non-Republican spokesperson. We have Shannon Powell with us, who's speaking on behalf of the Shelley Mayer contingent. And Shelley and I never went to school together, so I only know her through our show here. And she's the head of Indivisible Westchester, which is an organization that is gaining so much traction and getting so much press. I wish I was their PR person, because they are going great guns at helping to get people elected. And having this group behind her election may very well help Shelley Mayer get over the top if she ends up winning. We also have with us someone I've known since I'm guessing 9 or 10 years old, and we played Major League Baseball together. And he is a Portchester political firebrand. His name is Christopher Pierro. And we're all sitting on pins and needles over Christopher's insights into the election. Chris, why don't you identify who you're supporting? I mean, you are supporting a particular candidate.
Yes, I am supporting Julie Killian for the 37th Senate District, and I have a lot of good reasons why.
Okay, so before we get to you and why...
don't forget, we also have Efraim Gonzalez,
Gonzalez
on the line, who is
Efraim.
a Bronx political pundit, and he is the son of former New York State Senator Efraim Gonzalez Jr. So,
I also know.
Sure.
So we have a
full house.
Full house.
So let's start. I don't know. Democrat comes for Republican alphabetically. So Shannon, why is it important for Shelley to win now if, in fact, she's probably going to run again in November? What's the big deal over 5 months?
Well, somebody has to win the first election. And, of course, if you're elected the first time, it's much easier to win the second time. And, honestly, I do think people want to see change in Albany. And I think Shelley Mayer is the kind of person who can bring, as a Democrat, and try to bring new leadership to Albany. It could change the dynamic of the state Senate. And that's important to a lot of people who want to see a more progressive trajectory out of Albany.
But wait a minute. She's replacing George Latimer.
She is.
They are, if not in lockstep.
Yeah.
So how does she represent change from George Latimer?
Well, she's going to be in the spirit of George Latimer, but it's all about the dynamic in Albany, and it's all going to be about who's going to hold the leadership position. So the state Senate, because there's a contingency of Democrats who used to be with something called the Independent Democratic Caucus, or they're now going
You mean
over.
the runaway Democrats?
IDC, yes. They've now come back into the fold. Yes. So basically, I mean, not to get all inside baseball-y, but this is a chance for there to be finally, after many years of Republican leadership out of the state Senate, to flip that to a Democratic leadership.
You could almost say dominance, actually.
Republican dominance in the state Senate? Absolutely. Yeah. And so, if you're tired of what's coming out of Albany, then this is a chance to change that dynamic.
Doesn't change what's coming out of the governor's office. The governor does what he does.
Well, I mean, but it's going to change the dynamic of how everybody works together, and that's the secret sauce.
I don't know. He seems like he's always seemed like a bully to me. We're going to Mollie. We're never going to get to you until after we come back. Now, by the way, I am a registered Democrat. For anyone who's listening, I don't vote specifically as a Democrat. I used to vote for Pierro. I voted for Janine in part because I told her I have a feeling she's a camera in my voting booth, and if I didn't vote for her, she'd come to my house in White Plains and beat the living daylights out of me. And I voted for George Pataki, who I worked for at the time I voted for him. But this is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX. When we come back, we're going to hear from the Democratic side, from my friend of over 50 years, Chris Pierro, and my other two hosts are going to open their mouths as well. Remember, it's a beautiful day, and tomorrow's supposed to be nice too. And get out and vote. Whatever you do tomorrow, vote often.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Sharan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and we have a full house in studio today. And on the phone. We have Shannon Powell, who works with, and we're talking politics today because there is the special election coming up tomorrow. And Shannon Powell here, who is an associate and works with Shelley Mayer, and Mollie Fullington, who works with Julie Killian. And while we heard from Shannon before the break, we didn't get the chance to speak to Mollie. And Mollie, tell us a little bit from your perspective why it's important for Julie to be elected tomorrow.
Well, I think it's interesting that Shannon suggested that this is a change election, because we believe it is too. And Julie Killian is not a career politician. She is a chemical engineer with an MBA, mother of 5, who's worked in the community for 25 years. And she really is an outsider to Albany. Mm-hmm. And her opponent has been in Albany for 35 plus years. And so it's kind of ironic to say that Shelley Mayer can change Albany. That said, Julie has been spending every day meeting voters, and she's been to 15,000 doors over the past couple of months. And as she walks around and talks to voters, the issues that matter to her, matter to them, at the top of the list is property taxes and people who cannot afford to stay in New York anymore. And we need...
New York or Westchester?
In Westchester, in the district in specific. She's walking around the district to encourage people to vote.
Highest property taxes in the country.
In the country, absolutely. Westchester.
But very little of that has to do with county government or state government. A lot of it's federal.
Well, no, school aid is the big issue. Yes, school aid is the majority.
Yes, okay.
But that is determined on the state level, and that's something we've been talking about a lot. And I think in the end, you can talk about how things are wrong in Albany, and you can make excuses for why things aren't going your way. But if you've been up there for 35 years, it's really hard to make an argument that you're the one who will change things. So we think we have a pretty strong argument that Julie is the change candidate, and Julie can go up there and make a difference and work to make things easier and more affordable for the people in Westchester.
Okay, speaking of, this is a very, very significant election because it could change the balance in the Senate. Now, Efraim, if you're on the line, I want to talk to you about special elections, because I know that your father was in some. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your father was involved in some special elections, but and a lot of times there is a low voter turnout. So can you talk a little bit about that and how important it is for everybody to come out and vote? How every vote is critical in these elections.
Oh, yes. Ardina, the special election, even though it happens and people go to the polls and people know how to go to the polls, generally speaking, most people don't go to the polls, most voters, it's how the operations of each candidate draw in people. So having people pick people up and get them to the polls, or having them get, coaches to go to block associations and to remind people, that's very important, because your turnout is very much less than even, a regular primary, even if there wasn't a real hot contested race. So the dynamics are very strange. And I could tell you that my father and I learned a lot from him. In 1978, when Herman Badillo took the job from Congress to become the deputy mayor, his seat went up as a special election, and at that time, Assemblyman Luis Nunez was running on the Democratic line. Bob Garcia, who was a state senator, went on the Republican line, and he beat him in the South Bronx. So it was because of the operation that he got on Election Day, that special election, and it happens. It's happened around the state. It doesn't happen all the time, but you got to draw people in. And this race in Westchester, it's not in the bag for Shelley Mayer, because a lot of times Republicans tend to vote more in Westchester County in special elections. So you got to be careful. So, I know everybody knows Shelley and they wanted her, but even if she wins that, they have Felder in the state Senate, who will actually caucus with the Republicans. So he'll make himself sort of like the lone IDC. But right after this election is over, right after the governor, after the general election in November, I could see Jeff Klein and the IDC near the budget times going back to caucusing with the Republicans.
Really?
This is all show.
What are you basing that on?
I'm basing it on my years of experience, and that people...
A cynical Bronx politician. Gotta love that.
Right, and what's really funny about this is that the race for the 34th Senate District, which is Senator Jeff Klein's district, he is having an opponent in the name of Alessandra Biaggi, who not only is...
Yeah, by the way, you stop there. We had her on the show a couple of months ago. She's Mario Biaggi's granddaughter, and she is a firebrand. But Efraim, we want you to stay on the air, but we want to get our other guests. Chris. We want to get our one of our other guests on. So just stay on the line. But so, Chris, you've been listening to
that's Chris Pierro.
Chris Pierro from Portchester. You've been listening to all of this. What do you think? What are you thinking? And speak closer to the mic.
Like we discussed at lunch, Peter. Julie Killian ran against a very strong candidate in George Latimer. George didn't light the world on fire in Albany, but he is, in fact, the best retail politician I've ever seen. The guy's worn out more shoes than anybody I know. But this race is really about Julie Killian, what she brings to the table. Shelley Meyer is another lawyer who's been up there for 35 years. Okay. She was there in 2009 and 2010 when two women came to her and said, hey, we're being sexually harassed. She was the lawyer for the Senate. That's a very extremely powerful position.
And she opposed that. She
brought it to Aponte. He did nothing.
But that's not her.
Peter, as an officer of the court, she's held to a higher standard. Those crimes should have been reported. Period. End of story.
But she did that.
She didn't. She didn't push hard enough. You know why? She was afraid of the quiet ride in the elevator. That's how Albany works.
Well, what is the quiet ride in the elevator? I've never heard
that. It's like when the leader's in there and it's when the leader's in the elevator with you and he's not talking to you. And that's not good.
Well, if you ever met Sheldon Silver, if you ever met Sheldon Silver, most of the time he doesn't have anything to say. He wouldn't talk on a public elevator with anybody, which is why it was always hard to nail him. He was always in the corner somewhere. I mean, whether you like Sheldon Silver or not, or you like his policies or not, he's a quiet politician. Right. So I don't think silence in the elevator would have made a damn bit of difference. So I don't see where that's an issue. However, you raised your point with a lot of strength and passion, and we appreciate it.
Well,
wait. We're going to
calculator to Albany, not a law degree.
And now you know why Chris is on our show today, because we need some fire here, and we have it. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. Right, my friends. friends in Portchester can call Chris on his private line while we're on break and calm him down, I would appreciate that. I've been trying for over 50 years and haven't always succeeded.
WVOX. Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to the second half hour of Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. We certainly have a dynamic show today. I'm John Sharan, along with Peter Moses, Ardina Seward, and in studio we have Shannon Powell, who works with Democrat Shelley Mayer, Mollie Fullington, who works with Republican Julie Killian, Christopher Pierro, a longtime Portchester observer of politics, and on the phone we have Efraim Gonzalez, a Democrat pundit from the Bronx. And ladies, you know, the issues that we have coming up for tomorrow's election are many. I know that we had discussed a few off the air. Why don't we start by talking about where the candidates stand on the issue of gun safety? And Mollie, since Shannon went first the first time round, why don't you go first this time?
Well, this is obviously a big issue in this election, and since the Parkland tragedy, it's been front of mind for so many voters, and of course the candidates in the race too. Julie is for common sense gun safety laws, and that includes well, first of all, we should say that New York State has the strongest gun laws in the country, which is a pretty good place to start.
And yet we had gun shows in Westchester up until our new county executive.
Well, I'll tell you where Julie stands. She believes we should raise the age to 21 to buy a firearm. Mm-hmm. She believes we should ban assault weapons. And she, I think the universal background checks, which I think are, everyone seems to believe that's a good idea. Banning bump stocks. The bottom line is government's primary role is to keep us safe as citizens. And again, she's working very hard and walking around and talking to people and meeting people. And her take on it is that even people who are gun owners, people who are NRA members, everyone seems to agree that we need common sense gun safety laws. And it seems to be a universal feeling.
And Shannon,
that's a lot of the feedback. No, that's a lot of the feedback that, I think this is universal among all voters. In fact, there was a poll that was just out. It was a Washington Post poll, and it showed that a majority of Americans, like 60-some-odd% now, want an assault rifle ban. I know we have the SAFE Act, but I will point out that Senate Republicans want to repeal the SAFE Act. So that's another reason to vote for Shelley Mayer, because it is in danger. I mean, it's not a sure thing keeping that legislation in place. Also, red flag laws are popular, as are...
What's a red flag law?
So it's if you have somebody who has a history of being violent or mentally ill, then you can take the gun away. There was actually just that case with the Waffle House shooting. Mm-hmm. In Tennessee, which was so tragic, they took the gun away, and his father gave it back to him. I mean, it's terrible, but you just see. I mean, it puts a real face to the issue.
Sure.
This does happen, and then also, as Mollie was saying, the bump stocks. I mean, these are all things that I think there is universal agreement, and I think that it's what's been wonderful that you've seen in this election is all of the young people who've come out.
So, but both sides of both Republican and Democrat in Westchester support, at the very least, sensible gun legislation.
Well, it depends. Well, yes, but what is the Republican leadership going to do if Julie Killian is? I
understand. But I'm talking about,
and that's the bigger issue. Is that what the Democrats will say is they'll say, well, it's nice that we agree, and that's fantastic. We should have more of that, frankly, moving forward. But again, what is going to be realistic in terms of, coming to the floor and getting passed and also standing as law? So, and that's going to be more likely with the Democratic majority.
Chris, you're a voter, and you're a very active participant in our democratic process. You attend a lot of meetings. You are a very active Republican. Do you think that the gun issue is so serious for Westchester voters? Is this something you and your friends talk about?
No, it's with the advent of the new gun laws. They pretty much have the strictest gun laws in the state.
Well, we know that, but I'm asking you if it's something that comes up in your general conversations with people.
No, usually something like that comes up when something bad happens.
So what about when you sit down with your friends, when you go to T&J in Portchester, a very fine place to eat, by the way, across from Neary's Bakery.
No argument there.
No argument there. You're the one who took me there the first time. When you sit around with your friends over there, or in the other myriad places you go to, what are the issues you do talk about? What matters to you? Besides party, what issues resonate with you? Since you say you're an ideologue and not just a rock rib Republican.
Well, you and I love our hometown. The issues that come up are always surrounded by taxes, real estate development.
So we're talking
when
about
is it going to happen? Yeah. I mean, you can do it two ways. You can get the money from the state, and that ain't happening. And it hasn't happened under George Latimer, and it's not going to happen under Shelley Meyer because it's going to be more of the same. That is the key issue.
Julie Killian's going to unlock taxes? The tax issue?
I will give you this. She's going to fight like hell because, you know, the current formula does not work for the Portchesters, the New Rochelle's, the Yonkers, and the Mount Vernons. It's just totally unfair to perceive Westchester from the state point of view as a wealthy community. So, I mean, it's a real issue.
What do you both say to that?
One of the things I would say,
Chris raises a good point.
No, one of the things I would say, and I know this is something that George Latimer and even the governor has pushed, is shared services. I mean, there are ways to save money and and I mean, this is something that actually Rob Astorino had a chance to go and to have some to really make some strides with shared services when Cuomo asked the different counties to put together their plans, and I believe in Long Island they came up with a much better formula for sharing services and saving taxpayer money. I mean, it's important.
And Shelley Mayer,
and there's work to be done there.
Supports that.
I think supporting shared services. I'm speaking as a voter is something that we can all look at doing. That's easy and makes a lot of sense. But I know it's something George Latimer is going to push.
But I think in some ways even that can be problematic. There was an issue, I believe that was last year. Well, there was a reciprocal agreement between Yonkers Fire Department and Mount Vernon Fire Department, and when the Mount Vernon Fire Department needed additional manpower, they would call on the Yonkers Fire Department, and after a while, it just got to be the Yonkers Fire Department was responding to more calls than they wanted to respond to in Mount Vernon. So basically, they were saying that Mount Vernon Fire Department wasn't bearing up their share of the burden of putting out fires. So. Yeah, I mean, you can have shared services, but there has to be a criteria. There has to be a sense of balance on how the services are shared. Somebody has to set that standard.
Oh, absolutely.
I got something.
Well, why don't we let Mollie respond as well?
Chris, please.
Chris is terrific. So is Shannon. A few little points. Just to be clear, Julie Killian would not vote to repeal the SAFE Act. She does support the extreme risk protection orders that we talked about, the red flag laws. And on this issue of her not having a voice in the Senate, if you know Julie Killian, you would know that she will have a voice when she gets up there. And I would say, logic says, that you want a Republican, a moderate Republican in Albany who is fighting for downstate issues. And this is what this is what we're talking about. The fact that she's willing to go to Albany and stand up against either side, but for the taxpayers of Westchester, whatever those issues are that mean to them. And that includes school aid, and that includes these gun safety issues that aren't always in lockstep with the folks in Albany. That includes ERPO. That includes the Child Victims Act, which she supports, but the extreme risk protection order.
Okay, I'd like to ask you this, Mollie, and I have asked Julie this before. I mean, yes, she is not in favor of repealing the Safe Gun Act. However, there is a group of upstate politicians that want to do that, and upstate Republicans that want to do that. And if she wins, she's going to get pressured by that group to say, look, come over on our side, you better play ball, because when you want to have legislation passed, you can count us out. So how is she going to handle that?
But don't you want her up there? If we still have a Republican Senate, don't you want a Republican who's fighting for moderate issues from downstate?
I'm going to respond on the other.
I don't mean that directly to you. I mean
we're not going to have a response now because we have to take another break. But after we get back from the break, we'll find out what our Dina thinks about this whole situation. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. We're talking about tomorrow's special election. We hope everyone goes out to vote, but we'll be back with more conversation right after this.
On the right side of your radio dial.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our Dina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the radio. This has been the loudest group of people in this studio.
It's a spirited discussion, Peter.
This is louder than election night when none of you guys are here, where there are all these rock rib Republicans who are literally sitting on the left side of the room, or actually if you're walking on the right side of the room, the Democrats are on the left. I'm in the center somewhere. But this has been a really spirited conversation that we've had about the race tomorrow. Now remember, you get to vote for either Shelley Mayer or Julie Killian tomorrow if you live in this district over here. Was it District 24?
No.
37. 37 is the magic number.
No, tomorrow's the 20.
Tomorrow's the 24th.
Well, it applies to New Rochelle.
God willing.
I have Willie Mays' number on my brain since I'm a little boy. Anyway, we also have Efraim. We have representatives of both sides here, and Chris Pierro, who has become a political pundit during our hour here, which he's loving. And we also have Efraim Gonzalez. And Ardina, you had a question for Efraim that you wanted to explore a little bit more. Then we have to get back to these people in this room here.
Okay, yeah, Efraim, I want to get back to the whole IDC movement or non-movement at this stage. You said something interesting early on, saying that Klein had sort of seen the error of his ways and gone back to the Democratic side, and you also indicated that he might just reverse what he did. So how will that happen, and when do you think that would happen?
Well, let me just say that the IDC and the whole entire, like when you see nobody in the Bronx Democratic Party complained about the IDC because they were all in on it. The borough president, everybody. Governor Cuomo, it helped him because he wasn't allowing progressive legislation to pass through. And that's why the IDC was created, and Klein volunteered. Now, Klein's goal and vision is that he wants to be the majority leader, but that'll never happen because once you're a traitor, it's just not going to happen.
Nobody on either side of the aisle trusts him. Or his permatan.
Because a lot of people, like right now, they're looking at Shelley Mayer, whatever. They're not going to decide anything. I mean, they're going to go in their numbers, but he's going to go back once the power of the governor's race is decided. And if it's not a race, and after the election, they're going to go back to it because it's about the bigger issue here, and that is they want control. Cuomo wants to run for president. So why would he run as a progressive, but yet he has high taxes and he'll get attacked? The other thing about what I'm going to tell you is this. The IDC, when you're looking at the gun control thing, that's what's going to be the killer for Cuomo because you can't go around and say that how you passed the New York SAFE Act, which was horrible, and they got to go back and modify it at least.
All right. Well, by the way, Efraim, we're gonna have to end this here, and we'll have you on the road. We'll have you with us again in anticipation of the November election. So I just want to quickly ask each of our guests, and then Chris, you can actually sum it all up for us at the end before we remind people to vote. But I'm putting you on a time clock, so you can't go on forever, Chris. But Mollie, why should people vote for your candidate, Julie Killian?
People should vote for Julie Killian if they want someone who is going to go to Albany and fight for Westchester families over politics. someone who's going to go up and try to figure out ways to fix the problems, not make excuses for why we can't fix the problems. She's an outsider to Albany. And I think everybody in this room, and I'm hoping people listening would agree, that government is not working the way it should be working for its citizens. And the way to change that is to bring different people into the process. And Julie Killian is a very well-educated, intelligent, sophisticated woman, mother of 5, who's done a great deal in this community.
Whose youngest child goes to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio?
Well, her youngest is still in high school, actually.
I mean, she has a college investment, yes.
But she has 5 kids. She started RIACT, which is an amazing substance abuse program, has been working in the community for 25 years. And change is what people want, and that's why we want Julie Killian in the Senate.
That's a really great elevator speech. Shannon.
I think people want Shelley Mayer because she represents the values of the people in this district. She is against Trump. I think it's hard to couch Julie Killian as a moderate Republican if she won't denounce the president. Today on the Brian Lehrer show, she wouldn't even go as far as to say the awful things that he says about people. Take your pick. She won't denounce his hateful language.
She absolutely denounces that language.
But she should come out and say that because she refused to say that today. And I think voters see the president as a threat to democracy. They see it as authoritarian rule, a rise of that, and they see it as a destruction of all of the norms. So voting for Shelley Mayer is a way to push back locally. Local politics is where you can affect the most change, and that's a great electing people who represent your values is a great way to do that. Also, she's gonna be for election reform, for reproductive rights, for criminal justice reform, ethics reform, and she's got years of experience under her belt of bringing this kind of legislation to the floor and getting it passed.
Okay, we've had both of the candidates on our air, and I thought both of them had winning conversations with us. I will tell you that I thought Shelley Mayer was one of the more measured politicians that we had. She was not extemporaneous. She stuck to a very clear
agenda
and script in her head, which for interviewers is less than thrilling. And I don't think she, unlike Latimer, she's not glib the way George Latimer is. And if she doesn't win this election, it will be because she can't banter the way Julie Killian can banter.
She's a lawyer.
But Shelley's the real deal. I mean, you can banter all you want, but are you going to have results? Okay,
I understand.
There are so many. She has 2,000 volunteers, and I don't think you're going to get 2,000 volunteers and knock on tens of thousands of doors and have troops, an army of people across all different kinds.
I didn't say she's going to lose.
No, but I'm saying if you're not the real deal, and if you're not somebody who people can really connect to. And I think she's really made that connection with a lot of people.
Walter Mondale had a lot of people going door to door too, and he was.
I don't think the election tomorrow is going to be quite like that. I think it's going to be. It's going to be.
You're talking about the people volunteering for them. That's to me.
She's the real deal. She's not. Yeah. No. I mean,
let me give Chris a chance.
That's talking to voters, not being on the air as well.
You're right. But it does speak to a different way of dealing. Chris, can you take the phone, the mic? All right, so you've been listening to this for almost an hour. You have your mind made up before you went on the air here.
Yes.
What is it tomorrow that people are going to think about when they pull the lever or they punch out the hole or they write on it and put it in the box? What is it that they're going to... what are you going to be thinking about?
And say it in 60 seconds, please.
Okay.
Yes.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. What Julie Killian thinks or says about John... it's not relevant in this race.
About who? About
Donald Trump is not relevant in this race.
Who is he, by the way?
I don't even know him.
Okay.
I don't like the way he speaks to people either, but I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Let's put it that way.
I'm aware.
Julie is going to bring that naivete and that lack of experience that the other side is throwing at her to Albany with a calculator, not with a law degree. This place is a mess, okay? Joe Percoco getting indicted and then convicted. I mean, the culture of corruption in Albany is out of control. How many state senate and assemblymen? 46? It's disgusting. It really is. And the people really ought to...
We're going to have to cut you off now. But Chris...
We're going to have a coin toss to see who's going to win. Okay, heads, it's Julie Killian. Tails, it's
The
Shelley
bell
Mayer.
too. I want to hear.
Okay, Peter's going to
ring
do
the bell as well.
I want to ring it too.
Yeah. I'm gonna. Okay, here we go. Molly.
And it's heads.
Okay.
What does that mean?
I forget.
It means that tomorrow everyone should go to their polling place. It means that tomorrow everyone should go to their polling place and vote.
Yeah, we're going to forego the heads or tails. That's as lacking scientific principles as anything. Who's on next week?
Next week we're going to have the Yonkers PBA.
And the week after that, we have
talk about police layoffs.
R.G. Belsky the week after that.
I think the heads. I think the heads was Shelley Mayer. So Shelley may be the